So if this isn't an option he needs to pursue, is that good news for him that he doesn't need to pay that in full? Because would that reach the 6 months? Would he be able to tap into this eventually? What does that look like?
He is the master of kicking the can down the road. And, my favorite example of this, favorite's probably not the right word. I think the best example of this was regarding the Trump Hotel in D.C. And that the first business day of his administration, there was a watchdog group that filed a lawsuit accusing Trump of violating the Emoluments Clause by having this hotel that allowed foreign and state governments to pay him money. And in the 4 years of his term, that case did not get resolved. Not only did it not get resolved, it wasn't even resolved who had the rights to file such a case. That part of the case went all the way to the Supreme Court, not even getting on its merits, and then he lost re-election, and the Supreme Court tossed the case as being moot. So he is amazing at being able to do this. I mean, I followed all the lawsuits that were involved in that hotel, and there were so many of them that just never got resolved until the issue disappeared because he sold the hotel and made a nice steady profit on it, and he was out of office. So we're seeing a replay of this. So, all of a sudden being told you needed to turn over $455 million on Monday, and instead you get 10 more days and it's only 175. Great.
It's a lot of money, but it's still better than the hundreds of millions of dollars more. But I do want to get back to Truth Social. You said, or an expert you talked to rather, called this stock different than what they described as a normal Microsoft stock. Can you talk about the differences there?
Yeah, I mean, it's a meme stock in that the fundamentals of Truth Social aren't there in a way they are of a company like Microsoft, is what this expert used as an example. They're profits, there's money, there's actual value in that company by owning it. And they said, if you were to see something where there'd be downward pressure on a company like Microsoft, you would start seeing pension funds and other groups wanting to buy it, figuring, oh, we can get this stock while it's low, great. It's going to be harder to do that if Trump were to sell his Truth Social or Trump Media stock early. You would see a downward pressure, is what this expert said, because all of a sudden Trump's disassociating himself with it. He's putting a ton more shares on the market, and you're not going to find those big institutional investors jumping in to try to, buy their own shares thinking this is a value because they don't think it is.
Are you surprised then that he is making that $3.3 billion windfall from Truth Social?
Yeah, it's a lot of money for a social media app that's not all that great, doesn't have a lot of users, is largely, pieced together from some open source software is my understanding. But, Donald Trump also has a history of turning nothing into a lot of money and then making it disappear and doing it again. So shame on me for being surprised, but yeah, I'm surprised.
Zach, you're on the Money and Politics team here. You guys have been following this case and all of his legal cases so diligently. What else are you watching out for when it comes to the money here?
It's not just the fines, and that he's leveraged. He's got several mortgages that are due over the next 10, 15 years. The one that's coming up soonest is a $120 million at 40 Wall Street loan that he has there. And that's a building that, due to some changes in its lease, is not really going to be a moneymaker for him in a few years. It's the lease is going to be very difficult for him to make up what he has to pay there. So that's one that's really interesting. At this point, he doesn't have as many banks who are willing to work with him. So trying to find a bank that's going to be willing to give him, $120 million, assuming he does try to refinance, $120 million on a business that is set up to be a money loser come 2033 when the lease changes is going to be very interesting.
You've done a lot of reporting on 40 Wall Street. Can you tell us what is likely going to happen then if he'll have trouble with banks?
He has a history of being able to find places to refinance. That's what happened with Trump Tower. There was a big he had a loan on there. I think it was with Deutsche Bank, and all of a sudden he was refinanced with this bank called Axos Bank, which was not one people really heard of. It started off as like the bank of the internet. So he's probably going to start looking for obscure lenders who are willing to lend him the money.